Hey there, today I'm going to get to talk about the leader of the X-Force and members of the X-Men with Cable and Domino. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. So for those of you who voted as to which video would come out first between Spider-Man and his new foes, and continuing on with the X-Force, it was really close, but as of Tuesday evening, the vote leaned just ever so slightly in favor of the X-Force team members. But don't worry, the next couple of weeks will be dedicated to the new amazing Spider-Man and his newly revealed foes with Carnage and Mysterio. And while I'm talking about new releases, I feel like I should mention the guild's sponsor, TRex Games. Because of their generosity, I'm actually able to do a monthly giveaway for Marvel Crisis Protocol. And additionally, if you use the code TRITEXGGCP5 at checkout, you'll get an additional 5% off your MCP items in your cart, which can be crazy when you pre-order through them for a combined total of 25% off. And with all that said, let's talk about our latest mutants. Cable has the alter ego of Nathan Summers. He has 6 stamina, moves short on a 50mm base, is size 2, all for 5 threat. His physical and energy defenses are at 3, while his mystic defense is at 4, giving him what may seem like a below average durability for his 5 threat. He only has 2 attacks though, but they're both really quite nice for what they offer. The first one is an energy attack, and it's Cable's plasma rifle. Has a range of 5, strength of 5 for 0 power. Has the usual line about gaining power equal to the damage dealt, and on a wild, the attack will give out the Incinerate special condition. Then Cable's big attack is Ascani's Son. This mystic attack is an Area 2 attack with a strength of 7 for 6 power, which is basically Thor's God of Thunder, but in mystic. However, unlike Thor's Thunder, Cable's area attack has a special ability attached to it, and it's a really nice one. If this attack deals damage, after the attack is resolved, remove 1 damage from this character. So Cable should be able to regenerate a couple of health if he uses this attack in a crowd, which is one thing that helps buff out that defense line. As far as superpowers, Cable has a plethora. His active Body Slide by 1 allows Cable to place himself within range 1 of his current position for 2 power. Naturally, this can only be used once per turn, but unconditional action free mobility isn't something we've seen on a 5 threat character until Cable, and also now Spider-Man admittedly. But it's always a welcome addition to a character's loadout. Cable then also has a terrain throw with Omega level threat. It's an active power that costs X, where X is the size of the terrain you want to throw up to size 4. Cable's able to choose a terrain feature of that size within range 3 and throw it medium. So very similar to what we have seen on Magneto, but this one can thankfully only be used once per turn. Cable's only reactive power is Telekinetic Shield. It allows Cable to give an ally within range 3 or himself 2 additional defense dice when they are targeted for an attack for 2 power. This shores up his own average defenses quite nicely, and of course can also be used to help other characters who might need a little bit of extra defense in those certain situations. Then finally we have Cable's innate powers. First up is his Techno-Organic Virus Suppression, which will give Cable an additional power during the power phase. As well, Cable is going to be immune to the Poison special condition. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty of my thoughts, it's worth mentioning the 2 changes that Cable has on his injured side. First is that his stamina goes up to a respectable 7, and the other is that Ascani's Son gains the ability to stagger an enemy hit by the attack if you rolled a wild and a hit. So Cable has a lot of stuff going on without getting into his leadership ability that makes him unique among the 5 threat characters, for now at least. The biggest factor that I think is easy to overlook is that his builder has a range of 5, especially on his 50mm base. This will allow Cable to be relevant just about everywhere on the board. Even on a D-Secure, Cable can be on the back point and have range to the characters contesting these side objectives. In worst case scenario, if the opponent is really shy, Cable can move, shoot, and then just body slide back onto the objective. On the B secures, Cable can just body slide up to the secure and instantly have range on enemy characters securing the point across the board, and be able to contest your own objective at the same time. So while the 5 dice energy attack on its own is not as impressive as other 5 threat characters' attacks and weight of power, range 5 can keep Cable relevant on the table wherever he is. I also think that having an innate 2 power per turn will keep him from being too power hungry, and allows for him to have access to Body Slide on turn 1, which can make Cable surprisingly mobile for a character who normally only moves short. Also, his throw is a good one. Nothing busted by any means, but still quite powerful, and finally being able to raise defense values by 2 for allied characters is an absolutely annoying ability that I've seen an enemy Doctor Strange do too many a time. So while Cable does have a lot of things going for him, he still does have his downsides. The first and maybe most obvious thing to me, at least, is that while Cable will never be power starved, he just has so many different things to spend power on. Throws, teleports, defensive busts, and of course his big attack just leaves him a lot of decision points to be made for how you're going to go about spending that power. And speaking of that big attack, Ascani's Sun is an attack that, like Thor's God of Thunder, is one you probably shouldn't use unless you're able to line up 3 enemies under that area. And because that won't happen too often, its range of use is difficult to come by. 6 power is just a lot, and unless you're trying to tear down Black Panther or Captain America, you are likely better off using that 6 power to throw a size 4 terrain piece and use the leftover power for a teleport or a defensive buff. Not to mention that keeps Cable out of the middle of a fight and still lets him get 2 plasma rifle attacks off. These are the standout pros and cons to me. His overall durability, I think, is fine. It's nothing to get excited about, but with his defensive buff and overall decent stamina, it's not something I'm worried about either. As for affiliations, Cable is the leader of the X-Force and comes with a very aggressive leadership ability. What Works allows each allied character to reroll 1 die in their attack rolls once per turn. So on the downside, it is once per turn, so its activation is kind of limited, but on the plus side, it's a free reroll, and consistency is never a bad thing. Also, if this leadership was once per attack, it would be insanely busted for any of those characters with beam and area attacks, not to mention those with rapid fire and flurry special rules on their attacks. Unsurprisingly, Cable can make pretty good use out of his own leadership ability. As for the other affiliations that he could sign on with, I think the Avengers would be a pretty great place for him unaffiliated, teleporting for 1 power on his turns and defending for 1 on his enemy turns is great, and frees up a decent bit of Cable's power. And of course, Cable is a part of the X-Men, and I think that both of the leadership abilities they have actually can work pretty well for him. Reducing the cost of his area attack certainly makes it a little bit more viable, or going with Storm and getting cover and an extra bit of movement from a leapfrog works really well for those 50mm bases. In summary for Cable, he isn't a super hard-hitting 5-threat character, but his long-range attack with Incinerate and a throw still keeps him extremely relevant on offense. Plus his ability to get a pseudo-free move for 2 power, which he generates every turn with his teleport, helps keep him on objectives or can make sure he has range on enemy targets. Before I move on, I do want to talk about Dropoff and why Cable was probably the final straw for it to get banned. The first explanation is because we haven't seen all of the tactic cards that they're going to come with, and there might be one that synergizes with Cable being placed by an effect, and then with Dropoff that just becomes stupid. But more than likely, I think it is because of the combination of a range 5 attack and his plethora of ways to spend power. The other half of the puzzle that broke Dropoff is flying characters that can move long that were just not a factor at the game's launch. The main offender being Angela with her 50mm base. If she was allowed to drop off Cable, he could easily get 3 range 5 energy attacks into your opponent's deployment zone without much rebuttal in the first 2 activations of the game, and then probably gain enough power to throw terrain or have his defensive buff dice ready to use. So by banning Dropoff, AMG has been able to open the door on their long-range attackers more, with Cable as an example, as well as not have to worry as much about how they design their flying characters. But that's my outside opinion looking in on it. So with Cable covered, let's talk about Domino. She has the alter ego of Nina Thurman, has 5 stamina, moves medium, is size 2 and 3 threat. Her defenses across the board are 3s, leaving her durability looking rather average. She has 3 attacks though. Her first one is automatic pistols. It's a physical attack that has a range of 3, strength of 4 for 0 power. The attack will gain Domino 1 power regardless of if it deals damage or not, and if you roll a hit, the attack will gain rapid fire. Rapid Fire lets Domino attack the same target with her automatic pistols again, but that second attack loses the Rapid Fire special rule. Her next attack is an energy one called Grenade Bounce. It has a range and strength of 4 for 1 power. If that doesn't seem like it's worth 1 power, well, it also has 3 abilities attached to it. First of all, this attack will ignore line of sight and cover, and the target character is guaranteed to get the Incinerate condition, weakening their defenses. And finally, if you get a Wild, the attack gains Explosive, which means before damage from the attack is dealt, other enemy characters within range 2 of the target character suffer 1 damage. So it certainly earns its cost of 1 power in my opinion. Then finally we have Domino's Lucky Shot. It's also an energy attack that has a range of 3, strength of 6 for 3 power. Any damage dealt by this attack will not generate power for the target character, and on a Wild, the enemy character gains the stun condition, weakening their power supply even further. Domino then has 2 superpowers that, if nothing else, I really appreciate the thematic side of as a really cool way to show that luck can be a superpower. First up is Probability Manipulation. It has a cost of X, and it says, after this character rolls attack, defense, or dodge dice, but before the resolve critical step, it may spend any amount of power to use this superpower. For each power spent, this character may treat 1 failure result as a critical result for the remainder of the attack. So because of the timing, this means if Domino uses her pistols and rolls a Wild, a blank, and 2 failures, then she can spend 2 power and treat those failures as crits and roll in the 2 extra dice, not to mention getting to turn those failures into successful results. Additionally, a neat trick you can do is spend extra power so that if one of your crits or rerolls gives you an additional failure down the road, you can still count it as a successful crit. But you have to spend the power up front, so it's a bit risky. Then finally we have her innate power, Things Tend to Go My Way. It says when Domino is attacking or defending, enemy characters do not roll additional dice for crit results in their attack or defense rolls. So while her probability manipulation shows off her own good luck, her innate power shows just how unlucky her opponents can be, which again I think is just really thematic and cool. I think it is worth though mentioning that there are no changes on the injured side of Nina's card, but with that let's get into the pros and cons, and I'm going to start with the cons because I think there's really only one, and that is her very average stamina and defense line for a 3-threat character. And while yes, average is still average, it turns out that the average 3-threat durability is not that durable. Her luck manipulation should help her out some, but I can't say it will be enough to keep her alive those times that she would otherwise be dazed. Until I see her on the table and just how much her abilities will add to her otherwise average defenses, I've got to keep this as a con. As for her pros, well, first of all, a guaranteed Incinerate condition at range 4 that doesn't require line of sight for 1 power is fantastic. If the attack can manage to deal damage or get the explosion off, even better. But pairing this attack with either her Lucky Shot, or if you have some banked power or just even her auto pistols, should be a pretty nasty 1-2 punch. My last pro is a bit of a prediction though because of her uniqueness. But in a game of spiky dice, I think Domino will have more consistent dice spikes because of her probability manipulation, which will make her quite the wild card on the table. What I do know is that because of her affiliation choices, I think she will enjoy her home affiliation of the X-Force and A-Force, as one gives her even more dice consistency, and the other gives her power that she can feed into dice consistency. But I don't think there is anything too exciting for her joining either of the 2 X-Men teams. As for her out-of-affiliation choices, I think there is one standout, and that is the Cabal. The potential power generation that could be gained from her automatic pistols, in addition to Red Skull's leadership ability, is really high and can let her feed power into her probability manipulation, as well as make a few more lucky shots. So that is all I have for Cable and Domino. Unfortunately, we haven't had any sneak peeks yet at the 3 new tactic cards that they come with, but I'm sure they'll bring some nice benefits to this new affiliation. Let me know down in the comments who all you think will be on X-Force's affiliation card. And as long as you've subscribed to the channel, that will also enter you in this month's giveaway. Here at the end, I want to give an extra special thank you to all of the members of the Guild Hall who are supporting what I'm doing with the channel. There are always more and more things I'm wanting to do, and because of this extra support, I am slowly but surely able to get some of those things checked off. If you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the links down in the description of the Guild's Patreon page and TRex Games page, where you can use that discount code to let them know I sent you that way. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.